Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview diverse change makers and creative innovators. I'm Deborah Levine, your host and editor of the American Diversity Report. And with me today is Jed Mescon, who is a relationship builder, brand ambassador, dynamic speaker, creative thinker, persuasive communicator, community advocate, you name it, Jed's great. He is well known in Chattanooga, having served as the host of the radio talk show Chewin' the Chat, I love it, and as the morning news anchor for WRCB TV. He also serves on many nonprofit boards and is passionate about connecting with people to find stories that need telling, creating ideas, and energizing the narrative to activate support for the greater good. Yes, indeed. Thank you for joining us, Jed.
Deborah, it is quite an honor to be here. And I am just going to tell you, I was just talking to you before we started recording. You have 15 books that you have written. I have never seen an individual keep reinventing themselves year after year after year. What you have done in this community is absolutely, it is, I hate to use the word amazing all the time, but it is truly amazing, from your early starts as running the Jewish community, the Federation here, to your weekly articles in the Chattanooga Times Free Press, to your many books, to your involvement not only locally but globally. Congratulations to you. It is something where you really have a lot to be proud of, and I thank you.
I thank you. How lovely. I appreciate it. It has all been a labor of love, something that I think you know a lot about.
Yeah, labor, that's for definite sure, what you have accomplished, because writing a weekly column is one of the hardest things you can ever agree to. Agreed?
Yes, especially when you have a 600 word count limit.
Wow.
That's it. And wasn't it Mark Twain who said, the shorter you write, the longer it takes?
Yeah, you're right. And the most important thing, if they're going to talk bad about you, at least spell their name correctly. So that's what I always like to. If they're going to talk bad about you, about what you've done in television or whatever, at least they spell your name right. That's the important thing. But thank you, Deborah. And I'm just glad that you decided to stay in Chattanooga, which is a true testament to your love of this area, because when you came, it wasn't as great as it was today, and you did not give up on this city.
Well, it's very true. We have seen tremendous changes as we've become a global hub for industry, and we keep growing. It's amazing. I remember when Volkswagen first came and how that changed everything. You and I both have seen in the media the changes as we are less of a small city, although we keep that kind of sweetness.
Yeah, we came before the Volkswagen. I mean, I think you were there. I came in '87, so that was with the announcement of the aquarium. And that, for me, I came at a great time, because that's when it was all happening.
I must have come about the same time.
You did?
Yeah, and it was the aquarium and the incredible architecture of that. Then I was leading the way to build a new Jewish cultural center.
Yeah, it was, and wow, I mean, it's just amazing what is on that access road right now in the Brainerd area. And I was, when I first came to town, I was head of the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. I was there. Actually, Michael Dzik, who was the current head of the Federation, was in the chapter that I was their advisor.
Oh my goodness, small world indeed.
And now he's going to be 50 soon.
Well, we have all grown and developed as this small city has become this amazing place with arts and music, and as well as the industry, and attracting so much talent, it has required us indeed to reinvent ourselves over and
Yeah.
over again. And you have done that for sure.
Well, you know, one of the best things that I ever do is I go out to lunch with people who have grown up here, and I could just sit for hours and listen to their incredible stories, despite the pollution problems or the union troubles that the city has had, or the strife when it comes to the politics or religion or race. They loved growing up here. It is just so great to sit back and hear all their stories. And you mentioned a radio show called Chewing the Chat. And one of the great shows that I did, it was just take us down memory lane. What was it like to live here? Give us some restaurants. Where did you used to go on dates? Where was the best place to make out with a date on Valentine's Day? Oh my gosh, it was the greatest stories that people told, and I love it. And Mark Kennedy, who I truly respect, he is a writer for the Chattanooga Times Free Press. But on Saturday mornings, they write that little column about remember when, and they take you back to what it was like in the 40s and 50s and 60s in this area. And I learned so much. And you know what? You realize how many Jewish people actually are responsible for the growth and the vitality of this area. I love, one day I opened up the paper and there was Uncle Herman's, and he was a shoe store owner on Broad or Market Street. I said, and I was telling my good friends like Michael Hannon and John Pregelman, I said, hey, why didn't you ever tell me about Uncle Herman's? And they go, oh yeah, Uncle Herman's. And this guy was so far ahead of his time, Jewish guy. He would put all the shoes out on Broad Street so people would come and, you know, shop whatever was on the street corner. I love those stories, and about Cameron Hill and what were the Jewish areas and the history of the temple. And I read a book recently about the unfortunate bombing of the Orthodox synagogue in Brainerd, and how the man, the last name of Franklin, but wow, he was, it is just an unbelievable read about what the Jewish community has gone through recently. I mean, that's not that long ago, the 70s.
Yes, and when I was building the Jewish Cultural Center now that we have, there were some issues around the extremists, neo-Nazi types making
Yeah.
threats. And immediately I had to sit down with the architect and say, the beauty of the building that we had planned needs to be adjusted so that it's the security that is paramount. And so we redesigned the building
Wow.
to make sure that everybody would be easily safe.
I mean,
Otherwise, it would not have looked like it does today.
wow, they talked about this guy who tried to blow up the synagogue. Thank God nobody was there that night, because
Right.
he had the schedule wrong. But he actually took a huge extension cord for this bomb and plugged it where he was staying on Brainerd Road. I mean, it was just, it's chilling to hear some of these, to hear some of the facts about this, and how fortunate we are that the guy was pretty stupid. He missed, he did not get his calendar right. So thank God for that. But wow, what history here. And I love, you know what? I love to listen to Sanford Weiner. I don't know if you've ever had him on your show, but when he talks about the Jews of Main Street and the merchants, I could just sit and listen to him, and the impact that they had in Chattanooga's business community. And I always wanted to meet Mose and Garrison. I never had a chance to meet them, heard all about their stories, but it just goes on and on. And I love this community. I thought I'd be here for a year, but I'm going on 35.
I love
So
it. I love it. Yes, I know
it's
that
great.
one. I will share with you that my family, like so many of the Jewish families here, were immigrants from Eastern Europe, but they were in Boston. However, my grandfather, right, Will Levine, was also a shoe salesman. Okay, and he was a traveling shoe salesman, and there was a story about how he took a train with my dad when he was younger and came all the way down to Chattanooga, right? And I just love the idea that somehow my ancestors found their way down here by train, I choo-choo, and maybe my coming here was meant to be.
Wow, that is a great story. Love that.
Yeah, yeah, he was, the immigrant life of so many of us, that are still, I think, in our DNA as entrepreneurs and people who are willing to take risks, who are willing to be very community minded. I think it's been a great benefit.
It's a great story, and I mention it all the time, but Dothan, Alabama, a small town in southern Alabama, but they were actually paying Jewish people at one time $50,000 to move to Dothan, Alabama, and they had to live there a certain amount of years. But the city fathers were brilliant because they knew that if they attracted Jewish families and business people who were Jewish, that the arts would thrive. And it worked. It worked. It's a great story. And I wonder who's still there from that offering. I love that story.
Maybe they'll be listening in and will make comments on your page at the ADR about who they are and what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our past mayor was Jewish,
Right.
right? But he was not the first Jewish mayor that we had.
You are correct.
Back in the day. And there were quite a number of southern cities with Jewish mayors who had come into the area, build up businesses, been community minded. It's a fascinating piece of history, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And, just thank goodness that there's people like Sanford, Joy, what was Joy's last name, who passed away, Abelson. I just love Joy and the Jews of Chattanooga. I mean, all that history that they've written. I know Mizpah has done a fantastic job of archiving their history. You just don't realize what's behind the bima.
Yes.
What's back there? It's unbelievable what's back there. Just fascinating to listen to that history. And once again, I could sit and listen to native Chattanoogans just talk about what it was like to go to Sunday school. And apparently there were a lot of great Jewish athletes, and they played non-Jewish teams, and we were really good, like at swimming and softball and basketball. I just could sit there and just keep telling me stories. It was so great to hear. I loved it.
Well, audience, for those of you who are not familiar with Mizpah, it is a synagogue, a Reformed Jewish synagogue, and it's quite a historical edifice here in Chattanooga. And there is a huge archives behind the bima, which I have donated all of the original articles that I've written for the Chattanooga Times Free Press.
Wow.
And to make sure that people have access to it going forward.
Actually, it's one of the most outstanding places for a concert to be held in this city because of the way that it's built and the sound. It's just beautiful. And Adolph Ox, who from the Chattanooga Times was able to buy the New York Times, so he built that. He built the current location on Macaulay Avenue in memory of his parents, and it's beautiful. It is absolutely a beautiful structure.
Yes,
Very proud of it.
right. The windows, the stained glass windows, doesn't get better than that, does it?
It was actually done by a local artist who
Was
did
it?
all those windows, and they feature the Jewish holidays. You just look around and go, oh,
Yeah,
Sabbath and Purim and Passover.
yeah.
It's beautiful,
And
really beautiful.
we have many people from outside of the Jewish community come through to look at the synagogue, to have a tour, to see what the history of the city and this community looks like. It's been an amazing hub for historians,
Yeah.
really. I can remember being in one of the Sabbath services and being surrounded by kids, students from the Southern Adventist University. They came in, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Tennessee arranged for a tour, a bus tour of all the different religious institutions, because religious diversity had become something very vital to their work, and to understand more about it, they had them on the buses, and I was the tour guide
Wow.
through Mizpah.
Is
What?
that where, now remember that Siskin Hospital Rehabilitation, they had one of the largest collections of religious artifacts in the world. And I don't know if they're ever going to put those out again or what they're going to do with them, but it was beautiful. It used to be downstairs in the hospispital. It was beautiful.
It was a museum all of its own. I do not believe it is open anymore.
No, it's not.
And I will say that I have donated some of my books to it in case they do.
Wow, good. Good for you.
And for those of you who are not aware of Siskin Hospital and all that's related to it, it's an amazing group of not only hospitals, but of rehab center where they can deal with the community at large in need of rehabilitation and exercise designed for those who may have disabilities.
And then there's, I keep forgetting that you've got a international audience here. So I apologize, because as a journalist and as a TV journalist, especially, I should know better. But we do have another component to the Siskin family. And I mentioned two men who started the Siskin preschool, and they had a wonderful idea called the 365 Club here in Chattanooga. And people years and years and years ago would give a penny a day, or $3.65. And that was one of the ways that it started on a road to helping thousands of children who were disabled. It's a great story, really is.
Yes, it is. It is one that I think needs to be told more. Thank you.
Yep, you are so right.
Right. Well,
And you know what? I want to mention one more time. We mentioned Adolph Ox, but his granddaughter, we were so fortunate to have, just like you, she came, she stayed in Chattanooga. Thank God she stayed. Ruth Holmberg, and who was the editor of the Chattanooga Times. But what she gave back to this community has just been invaluable when it comes to the arts. And we were so lucky to have that woman live here. And she was lovely, absolutely lovely.
yes, indeed. And she was kind enough to allow me to interview her.
Wow.
And the article that I wrote about her is up on the American Diversity Report. And I suggest, dear audience, that you take a look for Ruth Holmberg and see the amazing thing that she did during the civil rights period, as well as for the newspaper here in town and for all of the arts.
And come walk across the bridge in her honor and her memory. It's a beautiful glass bottom bridge.
Yeah.
That is something to walk upon and enjoy the sights of this city. I'm so glad we got her in. So thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
Oh, absolutely. The arts have been um, a an amazing part of this town. There is a park that we have that features all kinds of statues and outdoor artistry that you check out, and people who are singers and musicians, dancers that come from here. If I remember correctly, you're a singer yourself, are you not?
Deborah. Actually, Deborah, I can really sing. And if I could give it all up right now and quit working 9 to 5, I would give anything to be in a band. It embarrasses my wife and it embarrasses my daughter when we go to bar mitzvahs or weddings, but you know what? I'm 60, I'll be 62, and I don't care. I'll just get up there and sing with the band. It is the best thing in the world for me. I love that. So yeah, I can sing. Thank you, Deborah.
Oh, thank
You are
you.
so nice. Yeah, it's good. As a matter of fact, that reminds me, we got one of the best community theaters in the nation. It's one of the oldest. It's almost 100 years old, but I'm going to try out for something. It's time. It's time I go back
Absolutely.
again. And you should try
Absolutely.
out. We could be in a play together.
What fun.
Yeah, it's good
Oh
fun.
my, I hadn't thought of that. Although, I'm writing scripts now and I hope that the radio theater script will be done here in town first before I spread it out around the country. And I would like to play a part personally in that. We shall see.
We shall see. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's one of the beauties of Chattanooga is that people try. They are innovative. They go for it.
Yep.
It's an amazing thing.
We look back on this past year, and I'm going to be honest with you. One of the best things that I have done is I have reconnected. I knew him, but not to the sense where we've gone to lunch and have really had conversations. But his name is Dr. Perry Brickman, and he is from Chattanooga, but has lived all of his life, adult life, in Atlanta. But he wrote a book called Extracted. And if you are listening right now, it is available on Amazon. But he looked at, in his research, unlocked the rampant anti-Semitism that was alive and well at Emory's Dental School from the late 1940s to the 60s. And two of whom, my cousins, two of whom were actually kicked out of the dental school in 1949 for being Jewish. And it is chilling to read this book. And this man is in his late 80s, maybe he's even 90 right now, but the research that he did, it will just, your mouth will be open, which is a great thing to say for extracted dentists, but your mouth will be open with amazement that this actually took place in America and at a school like Emory. And finally, and I believe it was the year 2012, there was an apology by Emory to the students, to the teachers, to the entire country for what happened there. But that book is called Extracted. And you're not going to believe that these people, and he was actually Perry Brickman from Chattanooga. He opens the book, talks about how wonderful it was to grow up here, and he went to Emory and he went to the dental school. But his freshman year in dental school, he was kicked out because he was Jewish. He's making straight A's, Deborah. And how do you go back and tell your parents who have worked their entire lives to put you into that dental school that you flunked out? Deborah, you're not going to believe this book. And this is, I've met with him like 3 or 4 times throughout this past year. I'll drive down to Atlanta to have lunch with them, and I could just sit there and say, you've got to tell me more, please, Dr. Brickman, about what happened. My father always told me that there were quotas for Jewish people to get into professional school or colleges.
Yeah.
He experienced that growing up.
Absolutely.
I didn't. I remember my father always said he always talked about when he was growing up on Miami Beach that there were signs that said, no blacks, no Jews, no dogs, on many of the hotels on Collins Avenue. So this has really opened my eyes to what a lot of people went through. We take so much for granted. I mean, being a Jew in 2022, and thank God I have never experienced any anti-Semitism to this level. But it's quite a book. It's called Extracted, and it's
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You know, I worked for the Jewish Federation in Tulsa, Oklahoma, shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing, and was trained in security by the FBI. And we almost on a daily basis dealt with the extremists who were both racists and anti-Semitic. And my father, who was still alive back then, hopped on a plane to join me to find out what was going on and what were they doing to his daughter. And it turns out he finally decided to tell me that during World War II, he'd been a US military intelligence officer assigned to interrogate Nazi prisoners of war. And I have made it one of my missions to deal with all of this. And I will say that I have been targeted by neo-Nazis online, and fairly recently. It has not gone away, and we do need to look at it realistically, of how it works, especially with technology and being online. This is a different world.
well, a lot of people are brave behind an email. So you can be very brave behind an email. So, yeah, it's, you know what, I would love to, I think you would really enjoy getting a chance to, I don't know if you have, but to interview Dr. Brickman. I think he would be just an incredible guest for you.
Thank you. Well, after the show, we'll talk about how to get in touch with him
Sure.
further. And in the meantime, tell us a little bit about the community work that you've done to make a difference, to make this a better world.
Well, you know, I've been involved. I love the Humane Society, but one of the greatest gifts that my wife of 32 years now, Phyllis, has given me is the love of animals and what that joy can bring into your lives. And I could just not thank her enough for showing me the love of animals. So I've been very active in that. But I tell you, I mean, just currently, about a year ago, I became a big brother for the Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I said, you know, my daughter's been out of the house for years. You know, let's spend some time, and you know, helping to raise a 12-year-old boy is a lot different than a girl. But you know, this young man has had a very difficult life, and we do like two things a week together. One of which is karate, which builds so much self-esteem, and he's lacking in so much self-esteem. It's just been a horrible situation in his life. But I have really enjoyed being a part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And I'm moving on. I work at Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union, but I am moving on in the new year, and I am going to be working in the mental health industry.
Oh my goodness.
That's going to be quite a challenge.
Yes, it is. And I have relatives who work in that industry, if you call it that, but it's that's a lot to take on, Jed.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that my sister died of anorexia. She was 54 years old at 70 pounds. So it was a 40-year slow suicide. And I can tell you that it will destroy a family. Eating disorders will destroy a family. And I think one of the best things that I've learned is never keep anything about mental illness a secret. And I think that's That's where your problems lie, when people hold it all in. There should never be a secret when it comes to mental illness. And I've learned.
Well, they're going to be very fortunate to have you.
Well, thank you, Deborah.
I look forward to hearing more about that because it's very close to my heart, and I know that it's a challenge and a half. But we need you
Well,
definitely
thank you.
to be in that.
And I think it needs to be more, there needs to be a more open discussion in temples and synagogues too.
Yeah.
I just think we hold so many secrets, and that's one. I mean, being Jewish, and with the guilt and the dealing of parents getting old and not doing enough, and it's just, people need to talk.
For those of you who are not Jewish, this is part of our culture, of the generations, of the responsibilities, and the sort of communal sense of not doing quite enough, quite as
Yeah.
well, quite as often as we should.
And don't ask about the will. Don't ever bring that up, especially if you're like eating dinner out. Don't ask about any of that. You just need to call me, please. I will, if you are thinking of marrying into a Jewish family, you need to call me, and I'll set you straight. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that you're going to venture into, but I'll help you. I would love to. You can go into that guilt-free, and you can do it. Trust me. It's only taken me 62 years, but you can do it. So, well,
I grew up as the only Jewish little girl on the island of Bermuda.
oh, wow.
My family is the only Jewish family who have lived on the island for 4 generations. But my dad finally decided that we should be in a huge Jewish community. So we moved to Long Island, New York. All right. And then the culture, okay, it hit me. But it has such beauty to it, as well as responsibility. There's a reason why there is so much artistry and creativity, as well as determination and entrepreneurship. This is the drive, right?
Yeah, I remember when I was playing baseball in 7th grade, and I went to the Hebrew Academy of Atlanta, which was the most wonderful experience ever. 18 of the same kids going to school together for 7 years. We were just like a huge family. So I remember I was never a good baseball player, and I'm like short, and I don't look good. All the non-Jewish guys, they look great in uniforms, but here I'm just a dumpy Jewish kid. So we went around the room and said, where do you go to school? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm not gonna mention this year that I go to the Hebrew Academy of Atlanta. So I said, oh gosh, please, this is gonna be bad. So I said, I go to Christ the King School in Atlanta. I still wake up in a cold sweat feeling guilt about that. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, my parents put me through Hebrew Academy for 7 years, and I said I went to Christ the King School, and I still feel guilty. So, but now I'm very proud to say I am a 1973 graduate of the Hebrew Academy of Atlanta. So that's a little story. But hey, Deborah, it has been such a pleasure being with you. And every time I'm with you, you always stop, ask how my family is, how I'm doing. You're a real Mitch. And once again, I'm just so happy that you stayed in Chattanooga to do your writings, to do your lecturing, and your presence has been very positive for this community. So
thank you so much. And know this, the best is yet to come.
Well, your husband is a great builder too, by the
way. There's nothing like being married to a design engineer.
Right. Or a Jewish guy who knows how to put in like a ceiling fan or fix a toilet. That is amazing. That is amazing. One of these days, I'm going to learn how to fix the toilet. And it's just, my wife will be so proud of me.
So cute. Well, you call us if you need us. And in the meantime, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. And audience, Thank you for tuning in once again. You're going to love this and you'll be back, I'm sure, because we are here, American Diversity Report podcasts, to bring you innovators and change makers. Take care.